Hey there, I'm Becky, and welcome to Literary Escapes with me, Becky. Today's episode is an interview with one of the featured authors at the Coastal Magic Convention that will be in Daytona Beach, Florida in February 2022. I hope you enjoy the show. Today I have a fun interview for you that I recorded with author Violet Howe. If you haven't read her yet, you definitely need to. She has a fun variety of books and, well, you'll hear. So let's jump on into the interview. Let's go back to kind of the beginning. How did you get into writing?
I have always done writing. Like I've told before, I have a diary from third grade, and my goals for the summer were to stop my sister from smoking, get a tan, and write my first novel. And I think the tan is probably the only one that I achieved of those lofty goals. So I've always wanted to write, and it was always something that I've pursued kind of off and on in different freelance forms throughout my various careers. I worked in Disney fairy tale weddings as a wedding planner for about 15 years. I was a school teacher for about 5 years. Okay. And throughout both of those jobs, I would do different freelance writing and kind of stay in writing stories, things like that. And I always thought at some point I'll get to X point, whatever that point's going to be, and then I'll be a full-time writer. Right. And so my husband in 2012 was like, you know what, if you're going to do this, like, we're not getting any younger, and you might as well just bite the bullet and do it. And I know a lot of people are able to teach full time and write. And I just couldn't. Teaching took all of my creative energy and everything. And so I quit teaching and started focusing on writing full time in 2012. And I published Diary of a Single Wedding Planner in 2015. So,
cool. Okay. So 3 years from when you started.
Yeah, I had never not had an income, and it terrified me.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And so for probably the first year, I took on a ton of freelance writing work. And I was writing for people. I was doing a lot of writing for a caterer in Hollywood, and I was like creating menu packages and creating website copy and all that kind of stuff. And then I was working for a caterer in Hawaii because I had all this catering experience and all this wedding experience. And so I would get jobs writing things for those people. Okay. And so I did that for about a year, and I pretty much was working full time doing freelance work. And my husband was finally,
I would imagine it's like, kind of defeats the purpose.
Yes. My husband's like, we didn't give up a salary and insurance benefits and retirement for you to work for a caterer. So so I ended up cutting all the freelance clients loose, and just, as he put it, if you're going to jump in the deep end, you need to jump in the deep end and stop holding on to the side of the pool.
Right.
And so, it was probably like mid 2013 when I actually started writing the book. And so, I published in 2015.
That is so awesome. And did you self-publish, or were they?
I did. I in the very beginning, I very much wanted to traditional publish, and I had actually talked to a couple of agents, one who had requested the full manuscript of Diary of a Single Wedding Planner, and she wanted a lot of changes made. It doesn't fit in the shoebox for contemporary romance. It really is. That trilogy of books is like one story that's told across 3 books. And so you don't even meet the hero until a little over halfway into the first book. And she was like, you can't do that. The hero has to come in the beginning, and they have to do this. And it really, I felt it was going to change the substance of the story. It's kind of more romantic women's fiction, because the story is really more about her personal journey, and like her coming of age and figuring out what she wants out of love, and figuring out what she wants out of career, and figuring out how to stand up to her family, like things like that. And so at that time, I was going to several writers' conferences, and the whole thing with indie publishing was a big buzz of like, now that this is possible. And I had a very well-established author who had been traditional and was beginning to be hybrid, who she told me, she said, I want you to look ahead like 5 years. She was, I don't think traditional publishing is going to be the same force that it is now. And she's like, I really think that more and more people are going to go into indie. And I think that you should just go ahead and, pursue this and go into it that way. And I did quite a bit of research. And it's funny because so many things that she told me in that conversation have come to pass. And I'm glad that I, ended up going.
Interesting.
thing.
It seems like there's like some of the traditional houses are making these more boutique type houses that are part of them that and I wonder if that's kind of their response to the indie to make it
well, I've been told in several different, conference settings that the trad publishers can't keep up with indie romance writers, just the amount that they put out and the amount that romance readers read. And so they've kind of like acquiesced romance as a genre to the indies. And even I have several friends who are trad pubbed romance writers who've been told in the last couple of years by their publishers, you need to lean more women's fiction, or you need to give us more rom-com, or you need, like, you know what I mean? Like they're kind of like kind of steering them in a different direction. And so I think the field of romance is, I think, predominantly indie now.
How
so
interesting.
Much more so than the other genres. I think mystery, science fiction, thrillers, those still tend to be predominantly trad, even though you do have indie publishers in those genres. But I think romance is kind of, the indies have taken romance.
I love it. That's really interesting. I find that whole thing really fascinating. So you have a suspense series, a mystery series, and I'm not sure what the Soul Sisters one is.
Soul Sisters is Christmas holiday romance. It's sweet holiday romance.
Wow.
So I have trouble sticking with just one because I like all different types of stories. Yeah. So my wedding planner series, like I said, is a little bit romantic women's fiction, a little bit rom-com. It tends to have more humor in it. Cedar Creek Families, all of my stories have romance. No matter what I write, they have romance because I think love makes the world go round.
Yeah.
But the Cedar Creek Families tends to be more like the heroine is going through a journey. She's at some type of crossroads or some type of obstacle, and she's kind of like overcoming that, and deals a lot with families, family dynamics, things that other relationships, I guess you would say, that affect us, friendships, families, things like that, that very much affect us and shape who we are. And the romance is a very important storyline, but it runs kind of like
through all these other relationships.
Right, with the other relationships. So it's not like the main storyline is romance, but they are definitely romances. And then,
are these traditional or indie also?
They're indie. I went indie with all of mine. I like
even your romance, even your suspense and your mysteries. Are those indie?
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, because I like the measure of control. When you're working for a publisher, they are able to tell you to change anything they want about your story. They pick your cover, they pick your marketing, they pick and I've been told by a lot of authors who have both, who do indie and traditional, they're still doing the same amount of work marketing and doing everything with their books on the trad side, and you're making less money for it. So I just went ahead and did them all indie. So
well, that's awesome. Okay. And so where do your books take place?
All of my books take place, with the exception of the Christmas series, all of my books take place in Florida. The Wedding Planner series is set in Orlando. That's, where I live. So what you know. And the Cedar Creek Mysteries, Cedar Creek Families, and Cedar Creek Suspense, all of those stories take place in the fictional town of Cedar Creek. It is loosely based on Claremont, Florida, where I lived for years. And when I first moved to Claremont, it was a tiny, tiny, tiny little town, and only had like a couple of traffic lights. It has since exploded. So Cedar Creek is a fictional town based on that Claremont.
The back. Okay.
Right. And that way I was able to kind of play with geography a little bit, move the lake where I needed it to be, and kind of play around with the businesses and where things were. I didn't have to stick to the actual town. But all of them are set in Florida.
So now one of them, the Cedar Mountain genre, I guess that's what threw me, or Cedar Mountain.
Yes.
So wait a minute, that can't be in Florida.
Well, it's not, and it's so funny because it's a multi-author series. I'm in that with 4 other authors, and they all voted on the name. And I told them, I'm a little concerned that I have Cedar Creek and this is Cedar Mountain, but they really like Cedar Mountain. So I'm like, okay.
So, and so where is that one set at?
She really likes cedars. That one's in Idaho.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
Which I've never been to.
I actually have a friend who lives in Idaho, and it looks phenomenal. I mean, it
Well,
looks gorgeous.
one of the authors in that series lives in Idaho, and she had a specific ski lodge in place for us to use as like,
and so everybody used the same setting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
That series is very unique. That series is very unique in that it's written from 5 different character perspectives, but all of the books take place the same week, same time, same place. So it's a family wedding that's happening at this ski lodge over the week between Christmas and New Year's. And each book is a different character's point of view.
Looking at the same thing.
Right.
How interesting, because usually it's like one after another or something like that where you
different timelines. Yeah.
Okay, that's really clever. How interesting. And so how many books do you wind up publishing a year?
I usually am good for about 2 a year. I write longer books, and I'm a slow writer. I really I like to kind of like mull over the story and keep going back over it until I get it, where I want it to be. And then of course, the process of sending it off to editors and sending it off to proofreaders and getting it back. So I've been good for like usually 2 a year.
Okay. And one of the things that I was reading on your bio is that you love to travel. So obviously the last couple of years presumably has been a challenge. I get that. In your travels, where has been one of the favorite places that you've been to?
Oh my gosh, I love Australia. Australia will always be a top destination. Love Scotland. I had always said I didn't think I would ever find any place as beautiful as Australia, and I think Scotland is right there with it. I would go back to Scotland. Paris is my favorite city. Okay. Italy is the only place I've ever been that I really want to go and live. Like I want to live in Tuscany. It's just for a few months or a year or whatever. I really want to live in Tuscany.
I can see that.
I loved Costa Rica so much that I actually, this last Christmas book, I had the hero and heroine take a trip to Costa Rica the week before Christmas. So, and kind of incorporated some of the things that had happened to me on my trip to Costa Rica. So
how interesting. Okay. So with all these cool places that you've been, do you see writing books set in these different places?
Oh yeah.
Are you gonna, okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. I have a book club, and each month we visit a different destination. And so I'm always on the hunt for books set in different places. And so yeah, it's always fun ferreting out the new authors, new authors with books set in all kinds of places. So
and I feel like when I go in I travel a place, like I'm always thinking like, what would be the story here? Like what would happen here? How would they, so yeah, definitely.
I think probably just because that's how your brain works, right?
Right. Yeah. You're constantly looking for the story. So
exactly.
Yeah. I drive my husband nuts because we'll be in a restaurant and I'm like, did you hear that? And he's like, what?
I know, right?
Like, her sister was married to that woman's husband, but now they're best friends. And he's like, how do you know this? And I'm like, are you listening? Like, yeah. So I drive him nuts. Yeah, exactly.
I have like stories made up for all the neighbors down the road that I just see and wave at, but I don't know them.
Well, and I come up with like character names for people. Like when we were in Costa Rica, there was my husband talked me into doing surfing lessons, which I am not athletic at all. And he's like, come on, when you're in Costa Rica, when else are you going to do surfing? Surfing lessons? And so we go down to the beach, and the instructor was there, and he's like, we're waiting for one other couple. And this couple comes walking up, and they look like they're like on the cover of like some weightlifting magazine. Like there was not an ounce of body fat between the two of them. Like it was just, I think she had more abs than the normal person. Right. And they're walking towards me, and I look at my husband, and I'm like, I bet she can surf. And my husband, being ever supportive, is like, I bet there's 100 things you can do that she can't. And I'm like, maybe so, but I bet she can surf. And so sure enough, she gets up on the very first try and goes in, and her husband's like, why don't you try it left-footed the next time, honey? And I'm like, oh yeah, why don't you try it left-footed?
Because that'll help. Yeah.
She did it left-footed and did that perfectly too. So I nicknamed them Hans and Franzi, like from the Saturday Night Live characters, So the rest of the weekend, when I would see them, I told my husband, like, okay, Hans and Franzi are here, and then we went on a waterfall hiking tour, and there was a couple from Russia who didn't speak any English, and not that they could have spoken at all, because they always were like tongue to tongue the entire time, no matter where we were. And we're on this waterfall hike, and every time you look around, they're just like, kissing and making out on this hike. And so I named them Boris and Natasha. And so, I come up with all these names. So it's funny, my husband reads my books, and he was reading this one book, and the uncle of a character, he looks at me and he goes, "This uncle, that's that guy on the cruise ship at the table next to us, right?" I'm like, "Yes, that's exactly who that is." So I try to weave
really
them
fun.
in here and there. So
Okay.
yeah.
And so do you do one-off books, or right now it seems like you just do series?
I very much like series. I do have a couple of ideas for one-offs. I really like series because I don't like letting go of the characters. Like that was kind of a motivation behind doing Cedar Creek and setting 3 different series in the same town, because then like one of my heroes is a sheriff's deputy. Well, if any of the other books need a sheriff's deputy, you get to see Tristan again. You get like an update, and people are family members or their friends. And so I like that when I'm reading and I come across like, oh my gosh, oh, there's that person,
Yeah.
And so I don't like letting go of the characters when I'm reading or writing. I like kind of knowing what happens after the end. And so I like writing in series for that reason, because then I can have the characters cross over. You can get little updates, you can get little visits, and you don't have to leave them behind. So I like that.
Awesome. As a reader, I enjoy that as well. I like when a side character is somebody that I know already from over here,
Well, and Christmas Peace, which is that's the Christmas series, is a totally different series. It's not connected, but I had them when they were in Costa Rica. I had them meet another couple at breakfast that's from Cedar Creek families. And
fun.
So my readers, I've had so many readers message me, "Oh my gosh, Will and Kat, I loved it." So it's fun.
One of those little nuggets you give your people.
Yes, exactly. It feels like you're seeing a friend someplace you didn't expect to see them. So I like that.
Oh, that's fun. I love that. Very cool. So have you done Coastal Magic before?
I have. I did it as a signing author, I think 3 years ago. This whole time warp of 2020, 2021. I think it was like 3 years ago that I did it. And then I attended in 2020 with Alicia, the one I'm here with now. She was signing, and I just attended with her just to hang out at the beach with her for the week. And then last year I did the virtual one.
Okay.
So in some form or another, this is my 4th Coastal Magic.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this is my first one, assuming we get to go through with it. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Such a great group of readers. There's so many fun activities, and I'm really, really hoping we get to do it in person.
I hope so too. Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll see you next month, and have fun with your friends.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about the Coastal Magic Convention and the authors that will be there, check the show notes. I've got it there. Or if you'd like to learn more about my book club, the Literary Escape Book Club, just check the show notes. And we'll see you next time on the next episode.